Our guest today is Chairman of the Regional Transportation Authority, the RTA. He and the RTA Board oversee the nation's second largest public transportation system, which serves more than 8 million residents in Cook, DuPage, Kane, Lake, McHenry, and Will counties. Our guest today earned his bachelor's degree from Western Illinois University. He earned his law degree at DePaul University. And our guest is so smart that he had his wife, Stephanie, join us today. Please give her a welcome, City Club welcome, Stephanie. And like most of my friends, he married up considerably. Ladies and gentlemen, Kirk Dillard. Kirk?
Thanks.
All right, sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay, and good afternoon to you all. It's never a dull day as the chairman of the RTA when you wake up, as we do, and every day, and the Sun-Times headline is Back to the Future, where the mayor is talking about express service out to O'Hare. Or yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, yes, very nice words from the Wall Street Journal about the city of Chicago, where they had on the opinion page, Chicago isn't always the second city. And that made my day as we had a long board meeting. And it touts how our trains run on time and that we're the only city in America, the first one to have 4G service in our subway lines, that our on-time performance at the CTA is 96%, and the second city is certainly not second when it comes to mass transit. We're actually the best, which I will talk about in a few minutes. I want to just give a couple of shout-outs before I begin. Leanne Redden, who is our executive director at the RTA, is off in Washington, D.C. She's a member of our National Transit Board. She's out there hopefully finding some of those Trump $1 trillion while we speak. But she and the staff of the RTA are world-class, and they make me look and my board look good day in and day out. Don Orsino is also out in Washington, D.C., the head of Metra, who has spoken here many times. Don is retiring, and that is just a massive, massive loss. Don, a professional railroad engineer, is somebody that has, no pun intended, brought Metra back on the right track. But I just want to thank Don Orsino and tell him how much I will miss him. The other service boards, Dorval Carter, spent a few hours with him yesterday at the CTA. Jeremy, his staff at the CTA, just phenomenally dedicated people. Chairman Kwasniewski from PACE is here, as is the executive director, TJ Ross, who reminded me yesterday that if PACE were its own bus board, it would be among the top 5 largest transit bus boards in the United States of America. Rocky Donahue, the executive director, deputy executive director, and director Chris Canning are here from PACE as well. My board at the RTA. When I arrived at the RTA, I was blessed to have a superb board. And I have with me Director Don DeWitt, Director Bill Colson, Director Phil Fuentes, Director Blake Hobson from McHenry County, Director Chris Melvin. And then I want to give a shout out because they made my job so much easier when I got there. Jim Riley and John Gates are no stranger to the City Club. But they provided a tremendous, tremendous legacy for me to assume. And then last but not least, Frank Paul, a member of the City Club's board, serves as a pension and retirement unpaid advisor to the RTA. He actually takes the system, and I see he and Stella Black ride it downtown after they leave the City Club meetings, and I thank them. And then last but not least, the 15,500 employees of the CTA, Metra, PACE, the people that tirelessly work day in and day out to move our riders, I certainly thank them for their dedication. And then last but not least, I know Jay mentioned my wife, Stephanie. When Stephanie and I first met, she lived at Wilson and Magnolia, and she rode out of the Wilson stop every day, the L to her job. Man, when I'd go visit Stephanie, I wasn't just afraid of the characters around the neighborhood, but I was literally scared of falling through the floor of that dilapidated old elevated. And Stephanie, this one's for you. My wife and Blair Kamen, the city's architectural critic, Blair Kamen just did an article on what a phenomenal job the Wilson Avenue stop is here, and the alderman's here. That Wilson Avenue stop not only needed improvement, but it's a world-class architectural addition to the uptown neighborhood. And whether it's 95th Street or the Wilson Avenue stop, when we do things under Mayor Emanuel and the CTA board's leadership, not only do we get riders to work and employees to work and students to school, but we are transforming neighborhoods. And that Wilson Avenue stop, Stephanie, when you go back there, you looked at it with me about a week ago, that neighborhood in Uptown will change along Broadway forever because of the addition of the CTA. So, where are we? Let me just say that having spent the better part of yesterday with all three service boards, Dorval and TJ and Don Orsino and their staff, the collaboration between the RTA, the CTA, and PACE has never been better than it has been in my lifetime, I think. We have a great working relationship, and I thank them for that. And it's so critical under these very difficult financial times to have that collaboration. Our regional system moves over 2 million riders every weekday. 2 million riders. That's 1/6 of the population of Illinois is on the RTA system every day. So about a year ago, Jay was nice enough to invite me to speak here, and I called 2016 the year of the unexpected in that speech. You know, what a difference a year makes, folks. Donald Trump is now the President of the United States. Back then, we announced that. The Cubs had just won the World Series. Illinois didn't have an operating budget. Very few of us owned any solar eclipse glasses, and we had no idea that we're all Facebook friends with the Russians. So what do I call 2017? My theme this year is this is a year of irony. You know, when you look at what's going on in our nation, in our state, in our region right now, the ironies to me abound. First, let's start with Washington, D.C. What's President Trump meant for transit? President Trump is a New Yorker. He ought to understand mass transit. His Trump Hotel here in Chicago is staffed with employees that get there by the CTA in droves every day. His New York spends 3 times per capita on mass transit as we do here in Chicago. Unfortunately, during his first year in office, nothing's happened really so far with respect to transit. He did propose that the capital investment grant, which funds both big and small projects or investment projects in transit, essentially be phased out. And that's the program, if you remember, that President Obama, on his way out the door, announced about $957 million, over $1 billion of improvements for our core capacity issues in Chicago. Now, fortunately, and we have a great congressional delegation on a bipartisan basis, including our downstate friends, they've slowed that dismantling of that program down. But you got to remember that President Trump said that he wanted a really huge $1 trillion infrastructure program. And he throws that, number around a lot. But so far, the deal maker in Washington has not been able to put together a deal on transit or on infrastructure, and hopefully that will come about. But I find that ironic that the deal maker hasn't gotten that one done yet. The last time the federal government really did anything for public transportation was in 2015, and they signed a big bill that still supplies money to us for the time being. The federal government did, though, dump, like Springfield, and you'll hear about that in a minute, a massive unfunded mandate on it. We're mandated by the federal government to have something called positive train control on our Metro trains. It's important for safety. I ride Metro every day, but it comes with a $400 million price tag to Metro. That not only will it cost that to begin with, but will go on and on in perpetuity, including needing many more employees to man that system. Where's that money going to come from? So, how's our capital assets faring? I hear it from my fellow riders all the day. 31% of our assets are not in a state of good repair. So a third of our system is not in a good repair. Older means it costs more to maintain, meaning more employees have to be hired at Metra to maintain old trains. I ride downtown every day, and I can't make this stuff up, folks. I ride on the Burlington Northern Metra train that was delivered when Dwight Eisenhower was the President of the United States. That car, as Don Orsino has reminded me, is eligible for Medicare, and it needs to be replaced and to go out of service. So, if we keep this up, by 2035, 37% of our assets will be beyond their useful life. We need an estimated $2 to $3 billion of capital funding annually, every year. That's about double what we do today, over the next 20 years to just keep us at a state of good repair. No glitzy new stuff, just keep what we have. Our system, I want to stress, is safe to ride, but like an old car, it costs more to maintain. And the RTA, with the service boards, are making some very, very long-term plans with respect to investing in capital as we should. We help at the RTA where we can. Where we can is, I'm proud to say that the RTA has one of the highest credit ratings you can have from Wall Street. Yes, take that down. An entity from Illinois has about the highest credit rating you can have from the state of Illinois, and we aim to keep it that way in spite of Springfield from time to time hurting the reputation. Dan Cronin will tell you, my friend Dan Cronin, that while DuPage County really is a AAA credit county, he takes a little hit in the market just because he has an Illinois zip code, and we do too at the RTA. We're able to take on some long-term debt for the service boards, about $800 million, and we've been doing this while the state has done nothing for 9 years on an infrastructure bill, try to help CTA and Metra and PACE use our good credit rating. Ironically, like I said, it's been about a decade since the state has done anything about its crumbling infrastructure. In my legislative career, I was, honored or proud to have sponsored the legislation that helped lure Boeing's headquarters here from Seattle. And I've been looking at what it takes to lure companies for a long time from a lot of different perspectives. And I will tell you that our workforce is second to none, especially with the availability of technology workers. I heard on the radio today that Governor Scott Walker in Wisconsin has invested $7 million in a campaign to get some of these technology workers from places like Chicago, the University of Illinois, the University of Chicago, to move to Wisconsin. But we have these people here. We have the workforce. We obviously have the best location. We've got O'Hare. We've got Midway. We have a Midwestern work ethic. And yes, as the Wall Street Journal just sort of said yesterday, we got the best public and most reliable public transportation system in America. So as we're looking to lure Amazon, and there are 50,000 jobs here, let me tell you, we're doing it in an environment where we really need to have Springfield and the federal government, but really Springfield, because it's our state, step up with respect to an infrastructure bill. I believe Amazon, logically, for a lot of reasons, mass transit one of them, ought to be here in Chicago. So whether it's the Finkel Steel site or the Thompson Center or the McDonald's campus in Oak Brook or Motorola Solutions in Schaumburg, I believe Amazon ought to be here. So where are Motorola and McDonald's and companies like that moving? Chicago's led the nation in corporate relocations over the last 5 to 6 years, regardless of what people may have you lead to believe. And one of those major reasons is transit. And Amazon put transit right at the top of their list of public needs. Motorola solution Greg Brown said, when we decided to move our headquarters to Chicago, the fact that our talented workforce could take mass transit downtown to the new offices was key. Proximity to public transportation is important to us, and it's part of what keeps us in this region. Just look at that Fulton Street Market, folks, with Google and McDonald's going out there. That stop is unbelievable in the Fulton Market Station. Mayor Emanuel, and I couldn't have a better mayor with respect to being a champion and getting it with economic development of mass transit. We are leading, he is leading, the largest capital expansion in the CTA history right now, improving our iconic, I said iconic, not ironic, L stations, all without state money. What he has done with the CTA board in innovation, in the way they find revenues to support this system, has been nothing short of amazing. The city was innovative in using TIF dollars to leverage $1.2 billion in the close of the Obama administration for the modernization of the Red Line. So, what did Amazon say when they wanted to look for their second home? They said again, public transportation high on the list. So I thought, wow, you know, we should really be a shoo-in here since we have the best mass transit system in America. And yes, we got a great system, but don't you think that Amazon's actually going to look out in the future and they're going to want to know, what is your state of good repair need in Chicago, and how's your system going to operate 10 years and 20 years down the road? I've looked at a lot of studies that Amazon has looked at, and I saw one that listed and scored top cities to attract Amazon's HQ to. And I was stunned that one of them picked New York as number one, especially since that article yesterday talked about how often the New York transit system didn't work. In that study, San Francisco was number 2, Seattle number 4. You know, San Francisco has cost of living that is a lot higher than ours. Chicago was 10 out of 25. And guess who was number 9, right above Chicago? Rochester, New York. So what's going on there? You know, don't we have enough snow in Chicago? You got to go get more in Rochester? San Francisco, being number 2, caught my eye because they do have technology and computer science workers out there that Amazon's looking for. But obviously, if cost of living is a factor, we're going to win that one hands down over San Francisco. All 3 of our service boards in Chicagoland provide a couple of million rides a day. And San Francisco has about a quarter of the riders we do, a quarter of our transit system. And I want to remind folks that 87% of all trips taken on transit are taken by people who spend money, are earning money, or fuel our economy. The rest tend to be students. And one thing that makes Chicago different than many other cities is, the yellow school bus of Chicago is the CTA. I told the speaker the other day, whether it's a kid going to St. Ignatius High School or it's somebody going to the Chicago Public Schools, the CTA are how Chicago students, if you feign and care about education, which we all do, the CTA is important and critical for students, let alone the University of Illinois at Chicago and our universities as well. So the Bay Area, going back to that, the BART system as it's called, they have a capital budget of about $1 billion a year. They have a quarter of the riders we do, but they invest about the same amount of money we do. And last year, they just approved by a referendum a $3.5 billion bond program with over 70% of the Bay Area voting for it, with every penny going to infrastructure for mass transit. Why? They said they have no choice. It's how jobs are created, and they neglected their system for a while. Sound familiar? And this study says that the city second to most likely snag Amazon could snag Amazon away from what the Wall Street Journal affectionately called us the second city. How ironic is that? One reason is, they invest the same amount of money as we do, and they're high on that public transit list as Chicago, which gives 4 times more rides. So when it comes to transit, we're at the top of that list, and we check that one off with a lot of pride. One last thing on San Francisco. One of the things that they needed that money for was to keep their system safe from earthquakes. You don't have that problem here in Chicago, although we might have some cold weather. But that's a piece of cake for us. We're used to cold weather. So we're in the midst of planning now for the budget season for 2018 and beyond. We have a regional operating budget of about $3 million, but due to state cuts, massive state cuts, all three of our agencies have had to and are going to and talking about raising fares. In July, the state finally passed the state budget, and here's the irony. They passed a budget and mass transit got whacked in that budget. State cuts and economic factors are leading to about $100 million of less money coming from the state coffers than a year ago. And it's the end of the year, which makes those cuts even different or harder. New York spends, as I said, 3 times more than we do per capita, and London about 4 or 5 times. Our new state budget includes, for the first time, a 2% collection fee on sales taxes that are gathered for not only the RTA, but for, there's mayors here, municipalities as well. But 2% they're taking of the RTA's sales taxes from the metropolitan Chicago area. That's millions and millions of dollars from the RTA coffers. That includes money that the CTA gives to the service boards. What is ironic is Springfield already collects that money, yet they're going to charge Mayor Claire in Bolingbrook or Rod Craig out in the western suburbs 2% to collect their money as well. So they take 2% of all our sales taxes, which is a huge chunk of money from us, and what's left is they also cut 10% of what's called the Public Transportation Fund. On top of that, the state owes the RTA about $500 million. We're the second largest backlogged entity behind Aetna Healthcare and the teacher retirement system in the state of Illinois. And we don't get paid interest for the state's delinquent payments. We have to go out and borrow at a cost of another $5 million. So as you can see, this is all kind of welled up out there. And again, I got to repeat, state cuts have consequences, and thus the fare increases that you've read about in the newspapers. So there's a little more, or should I say a little less. Sluggish sales taxes are coming in. Senator Lausen, or Chairman Lausen of Kane County, is an accountant, and our sales tax revenues in Illinois and the region are down. And we think internet sales are certainly affecting that, and we're working with the Department of Revenue to try to figure out what the story is there. So the bottom line is $100 million of cuts from our state coffers late in the year, and these cuts have consequences, and that's not ironic. Mass transit returns 4 private sector dollars for every dollar that is invested by the public. We clearly move people who produce money and produce income, public transit, again, is, I think, critical, and I haven't mentioned these folks, to people with disabilities, as Phil Fuentes from my board knows, as well as people who are older adults who need vitally to get to physician and doctor and healthcare appointments. So we provide a very, very, very good return on investment, but instead punished by Springfield. How ironic. Other states have stepped up. I mentioned San Francisco's referendum, but recently in the last election, 90% of all municipalities or areas that put a public transportation referendum on the ballot, 90% were passed. Just to look at a couple, Los Angeles will generate $120 billion, $120 billion with something they passed in the last couple of years. Atlanta, and I was just down there, passed two 2 new revenue measures to fund different transit initiatives, $100 million in Denver. In other cities like Nashville, just unveiled a $5.2 billion transit plan. And in Indianapolis, they, at a mayor's conference, just talked about, and they use a quote I use a lot, if you think you can keep millennial workers like Amazon wants in your city without an excellent mass transit system, that's like trying to sell those millennials a phone without a camera. And that's a quote from a mayoral conference in Indianapolis. You know, and I'm a Republican, and red states like Utah and Texas get it, and they're investing billions in mass transit as well. So Illinois can't be left behind. The landscape in transit has changed. Technology, I mean, how many of you probably took an Uber or a Lyft to get here? I take Uber, and you know, it's not my first choice, but I do take it, and I realize that it's out there. Cars run on gas, at least most still do, and we need to understand what's going on too with respect to the gas tax, which should be a major source of revenue for us. When you look at Illinois' gas tax, we are in the bottom 10 states in America of how much of our gas tax goes to roads, bridges, or infrastructure. My road builder friends will tell you that as well. Indiana's new governor, Eric Holcomb, who was Mike Pence's lieutenant governor, the first thing he did as the new governor of Indiana is he increased the gas tax in Indiana by 13 cents, saying we need to take care of our infrastructure. The little old sleepy Iowa increased their gas tax by 10 cents as well. The federal gas tax hasn't been changed since 1993, and it's 18.4% or 18.4 cents. It would be 30 cents today if it just kept track or kept pace with inflation. And our state's gas tax has not been increased since 1990. It's at a flat 19 cents a gallon, and if we would have just kept it adjusted for inflation, our gas tax would now be 32 cents a gallon. So as the gas tax remains flat, that's a big problem for not only us, but for road builders and others who care about infrastructure. So, you know, another irony of 2017, I mentioned Uber and Lyft, is that you know, these millennials who love to take Uber and Lyft, and even old guys like me, they plug up our roads. There's more traffic out there. I've just talked to a couple Chicago aldermen who said, wow, Ubers and Lyfts are slowing down bus traffic on Michigan Avenue. No kidding. And the millennials who love to care about carbon footprints and global warming, every one of those new Ubers, the 300,000 or 400,000 Ubers that are licensed or Lyfts that are licensed out there, emit about the same carbon footprint as a bus. So if nothing else, I tell my children, look, just take Uber and Lyft as a last resort if you care about the environment. And they are not our enemies. They are our partners, and Metra just had a partnership with Uber and Lyft. But I do find it ironic, and if you care about the environment, the RTA and the mass transit system's the way to go. I like to remind people in this era of a few fare increases that if you dump the pump and took your and got rid of a car and took mass transit, it's $11,000 to $12,000 a year. So if you take mass transit, you save about $11,000 a year. And even if you don't take us, I tell folks that you save about $400 a year in gasoline because we don't have those 2 million riders of our system out there every day. So who's going to inherit our system? This is sort of my message from Thanksgiving. You know, they're the Linksters, the digital natives who are the post-millennial generation. They're technologically friendly, and it's up to us to sort of tell them how this legacy system, the elevated from the 1880s, came about. And they might not read a textbook ever, other than off of a tablet, but they may never go into a real bank to cash a check and just do everything by iPhone. But what I like to tell them is that, you know, you inherit a beautiful dining room table that you put your Thanksgiving dinner on from our mothers or our grandmothers, and we take care of it. In fact, we wouldn't even let one of these coveted coffee mugs from the City Club go on our grandmother's dining room table. But we got to tell our children and the millennial workers, you know, you're inheriting a great system and you got to take care of it, and nothing in life is free. I've spent a lot of time talking about what we need and why. Just a real quick glance at the future. Every 5 years, the RTA has to come up with a master plan. And I urge all of you, go to our website. We are in the process, this is a draft, it says draft for public comment, of our Invest in Transit plan. We want and we cherish your input as to what goes in there in the out years, and we're going to readopt an Invest in Transit plan very soon. So importantly, I just want to remind people that while transit helps the neighborhood, 2/3 of everybody that works in the central business district, an amazing number, nearly 70%, take mass transit to get to work. And if you didn't have Metra, this is just Metra, not the CTA, you'd have to have 27 more lanes of highway on the Edens, the Stevenson, and the Eisenhower without Metra. We got to stay competitive. Bus ridership's down a little bit, record levels at Metra and the L generally, but we got to stay relative, and we're partnering with Ubers and the Lyfts and the Divvies of the world, and we realize what we're up there and what our system is. So I know I'm speaking to the choir. If you're not here, if you didn't care about mass transit, we just try at the RTA every day to cut through the clutter. And our on-time rates of Metra, 95, 96%, are around the tops in the nation, if not the top. As the Wall Street Journal pointed out, the elevated system in Chicago and the CTA, the best on-time record that there is, even with Chicago winners. So, just to close, that great staff at the RTA, they're always innovative and always clever. We decided to be creative in a way to reach them. In the last couple of weeks, we've produced, and I urge you to follow us on our social media, we've discovered a way to try to reach some of these millennials or linksters and others. And the first one is we asked and did a video that went out on social media. Wouldn't it be scary if we didn't have a public transportation system? You want to show this one?
Guess how many rides we provide? Do you know how many people ride the public transportation system every day?
I would say way too many.
Some thousand amount that I have no idea.
Oh, it's a lot of us.
2 million rides a day.
2 million? I can't believe.
Can you imagine if all those people were back in their cars?
That'd be terrible. Roads would be gridlocked.
Guess how many lanes we'd have to add to our highways? Guess how many lanes we'd have to add to our highways if there was no Metra?
About 4.
27 lanes.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I'm from Cuba. I live in Florida.
Tell me, do they have a lot of public transportation in Florida?
Yeah, but it's not really good. Here, it's very easy to go to far place.
Do you think our public transportation system is important?
It's extremely important.
A lot of people don't have cars, so it's convenient for a lot of people.
The buses and the Metra make the city work.
Guess how much it costs to run our system a year? Do you have any idea?
Wow, that I do not know.
$3 billion. And a variety of factors, part of which are state cuts, are going to cut us $100 million next year.
That sounds really bad for me.
Wow.
Do you think it would be scary if there were no public transportation system?
Well, I couldn't get to work.
That would be really scary.
Very scary.
We need the system. You have a great system.
Yeah, it's scary. We have to get some horses around here.
It would be very scary if we didn't have a public transportation system. What can you do? When you get the chance, tell your elected officials how important this funding is. Follow us on the RTA blog and social media. This is your system. Use it. It would be a nightmare if we lose it.
Those were real people. They weren't actors, they weren't staff. Those are honest to God real people. It's not a political commercial. Those are honest to God real people. Last but not least, a slide or a video that we did for Thanksgiving. You got that one, Susan or Tim?
Here at the RTA, We are grateful for a world-class public transportation system provided by CTA, Metra, and PACE. But more importantly, we're grateful to you, the riders, who take more than 2 million rides each workday. So I've asked a few of my friends to share why they are grateful for transit.
We are so thankful for the public transportation that delivers hundreds of thousands of visitors each year to the front doors of both Lincoln and Garfield Park Conservatory.
We at McCormick Square are thankful for the great Green Line station 2 blocks west of our campus and for the new improved metro station located right in the heart of McCormick Place.
Ravinia is thankful for public transportation because it's environmentally safe, it's great for reducing traffic, and most important, brings wonderful audiences to hear all of our great concerts every summer.
Innovative, sustainable transit protects the environment and grows the economy. And I'm proud of the leading role Chicago plays in advancing these efforts.
I'm thankful for transit because it helps reduce congestion, especially here in downtown Chicago.
I'm thankful for our transit system because it connects our people, businesses, and neighborhoods across Chicago and the region.
PACE has been a great partner in making sure that associates from all across the South Chicago area has a very easy way to take public transportation directly from their home to the front door of our fulfillment center.
I'm thankful for the vital role that public transit plays in making Illinois the transportation hub of North America.
I'm so thankful for our transit system. I'm a daily transit rider, and so I know just how critical this is to our economy. It makes Chicago the world-class city that it is.
On behalf of the Chicago Blackhawks, we thank our fans who use public transportation to come to Blackhawks games at the United Center.
I am thankful for public transportation because it's critical to the independence of people with disabilities in the Chicago region.
By day, I'm a transit advocate. The rest of the time, I'm a transit groupie. Whether it's with my friends, my kids, I'm always encouraging them to get on board to ballet, theater, restaurants, all the wonderful places that our region has to offer. On behalf of the 2 million riders, thank you.
Thank you to all our partners who understand the importance of our regional transportation system. The RTA is thankful for you. Even more so, we're grateful for all the riders who ride our system daily. We wish you and your families a happy and safe Thanksgiving. Last but not least, 2 days ago, the RTA for the 23rd year in a row, so Jim and John, this is as much yours as it is ours, was awarded the Award of Financial Reporting Achievement from the Government Finance Officers Association. So we're good stewards of your money. Please advocate for us. We need a state transit or capital bill along with many of our friends in many industries. And let's snag Amazon. And thank you all and have a great, great holiday season.
Okay, that was terrific. And we have time for a couple questions. I'll exercise a prerogative of the chairman and ask if the picture of you with those two young women, were those your Hinsdale Red Devilettes, your two daughters?
They are. Those were my real children, and I drug them. Stephanie's my real children. They rode the red line to Wrigley Field to the. Well, I guess they call it Christmas or Christmas time or the Crystal Market in the park. So I take my kids like Mary Sue Barrett does anytime I can on mass transit.
Okay, thank you, Kirk. We've got a couple questions here. This is from City Club member Andrew Mack. In what way is the RTA involved in city conversations for the express rail to O'Hare?
Thank you. I'm there, and my board is there, and the RTA staff is there anyway to help the city and the CTA. We're there for whatever they need. We have, we may have planning money. I don't know exactly what they want, but we're there in terms of our statutory abilities to help them any way they can. My guess is it's going to be mostly a private endeavor. And as the mayor and his staff reminds me, don't say it's an express train, because it could be something very different that we've never really thought about. But we're there to help, as we always are. Anything that enhances Chicago's world-class image, makes it easier for people to get around, but most importantly, what contributes private sector investment in our economy.
Okay, thank you, Kirk. This is from John O'Neill. With infrastructure funding competing with other important needs, since you were a state senator, now chairman of the RTA, and that, how do we convince our politicians and the public of the need for significant revenue increases?
I think you got to remind them that we really haven't adjusted for inflation over a long period of time. I think you show them what other states are doing, and I show them return on investment. Let me just use the Brown Line as an example. When the city redid the Brown Line, or the CTA redid the Brown Line, not only did ridership essentially double, but every piece of property within a mile or a mile and a half of the Brown Line went up 40 to 50% in value right away. And the before and after pictures that the CTA and we can show you from our transit-oriented developments to the Brown Line are significant. Again, a $4 return for every dollar you invest. We haven't talked about Union Station. There's a study that shows if we were to redevelop Union Station like Grand Central Station or Denver or Philadelphia or these other stations, that especially in conjunction with the old post office, that if you invested $1 billion, and it won't be public money, it will be probably from air rights that go up. If you invested $1 billion in Union Station's redevelopment, make it a center of activity, you could spur between $4 and $7 billion in private economic development. So you got to show your return on investment, and you should show and use examples of what other states are doing, and remind people. Secretary Blankenhorn was here the other day in front of the City Club, and I think he said that the average Illinoisan pays less than $10 a month in their motor fuel tax. I don't think most people understand how little they pay in motor fuel taxes, and again, it's only got half the buying power it had the last time it was touched back in the 1990s.
Okay, thank you. Got some great questions here. This is from City Club speaker and friend Lawrence Massow with the Civic Federation. Printed so I can even read it. Thank you, Lawrence. How has amending the state constitution to create a lockbox for gas taxes and motor vehicle related fees helped public transit funding?
You know, Lawrence, that remains to be seen in the future, but it certainly helps. And one of the ways it helps is, it's like the previous question, it puts and shows people that transit's important. I mean, when 90% of a referendum on public transit passes nationally in other cities. So the lockbox amendment puts it in people's minds that, wow, you know, we have a problem. But our gas tax, I just said we were in the bottom 10 of what goes. You know, we have I wouldn't say a high gas tax, but it's above average. But we're the transportation capital of America, and you get what you pay for in life. But, you know, the lockbox, you know, puts it in people's minds that that transits and public works are important, and it certainly, I think, will help going forward so that we don't use lots of infrastructure revenues for something other than infrastructure.
Okay. You've handled a couple fastballs. Time for a real softball here. Even the questioner, Steve Rinks, says this is an easy one. How has the arrangement with Metra and Uber been working out to date?
It's a great question. And again, you know, I view these ride shares as not competitors to mass transit. It's our job to figure out how we interface. Uber and Lyft are great, what I call last mile enhancements for us. I'll give you an example. I saw a young lawyer the other day, In the old days, they would have probably rented a car or done a zip car out to take a deposition in Naperville. But this time they took the Burlington Northern Santa Fe to Naperville, and they ordered an Uber to go where they want. So Uber and Lyft are great partners with us. Metra has a contract with Uber where Metra is getting money from Uber to enhance their operations, with Uber sort of being the preferred provider, I guess, of Metra. But we're working on a lot of different things, and we're always innovative. And I'd love to find ways, and we talked with Pace at length yesterday about whether or not the Ubers or the Lyfts of the world can actually ever partner with people that actually order up dial-a-rides and need services at Pace. So, we're going to find out how things work in the future between ride shares, but I view them as partners, not predators.
Partners, not predators. That's a great phrase. Thanks, Kirk. Okay. This is from Jay Rock, sounds like a musician, who's with Rock, Fusco, and Connolly. What is your response to the Cranes article that fare increases and service cuts will lead to decreased ridership, leading to a downward spiral, which could lead to the end of Metra?
When you increase fares, sometimes there is a drop-off in ridership, but Don Orsino's not here, but folks from Metra are. I'm a Metra rider. Dependability, on-time performance, the amenities that riders want, to me, if you let those decline, you're going to lose more riders than a fare increase every now and then. And Metra and CTA and Pace are all going to have to explain to riders that they're getting something in return for increasing fares. And but if you let your system deteriorate, we're going to lose a lot more riders than if we have a fare increase. And I, was with Metra yesterday. We need to remind people, and it hasn't been talked about, there's a thing called a transit benefit, and if you work for a larger employer or go to the RTA website, you should be buying your tickets on transit pre-tax dollars. So immediately you could knock off up to 30% of the cost of your ticket. But if you drive, it's $11,000 more a year than if you take us. Our on-time performance is 95, 96%. And Jay, while we're very, very sensitive about fare increases, if the service isn't improved and it declines, we're going to lose a lot more riders that way.
Very thoughtful answer. Here are two questions that are similar. Bob Israel with EGM Engineering in the village of Northbrook, and John Mick. MPC has a What's Water Worth campaign to show citizens how cheap water really is and what we should really pay for it. You said citizens across the country are voting for transit funding. Why do you think we're afraid to charge citizens what transit really costs? And the second part of this kind of composite question, other regions are voting for self-funding and not state budget related. When and how are we going to do so? I don't see a champion for the cause on the horizon. Where should we be looking?
Sure. It's a great question, and I think you're going to see a campaign, if not led by Mayor Emanuel. We just met with the State Chamber of Commerce the other day. You're going to have that kind of campaign probably immediately after the gubernatorial election, and it will really even start before that. Our strategic plan, go look at that thing again. Invest in transit. One of the things we started to do is lay out a menu, the CTA, Metra, and Pace. What would you do if you got the capital dollars that we needed so that we can show state lawmakers and others, what are you going to get in return, or what will riders and taxpayers get if you increase our funding? So we're going to have a litany of things that will show what we do with the money, but I know the State Chamber of Commerce is very much invested. I'm sure the mayor is. But we're going to have one of those kinds of campaigns coming up very, very soon because we have to. We must have a state infrastructure bill pass or we're going to be left behind. I haven't said we need that infrastructure bill to match that Trump plan if it ever does come along. And then last, I didn't say it all day, but this is a crowning thing for the RTA and our service boards. We have the lowest operating cost per mile of any major mass transit system in America. That's with our winters, with our workforce. We have the lowest operating costs, so we are the leanest operation of any mass transit system of our kind in the United States.
Okay, thank you. We have time for one last question, and then we'll get to our drawing. This is for someone who lives out in McHenry County. Richard Thens, would it not be less expensive to subsidize Uber or Lyft rides for McHenry County ridership than Pace buses?
I don't know, but if you think it is, and we're always looking and we're always sharpening our pencil to try to figure out the best way to get people to places, and we are not. Metra has its arrangement now with Uber. We're certainly open to ideas and to look and see how we can partner up. So we'll look at that. We're watching the ride-sharing horizon evolve. But if you think there's ways that they can help, come and talk to myself or Director T.J. Ross at PACE. And as Senator Lausen, as a seatmate of mine, Chairman Lausen taught me so many years in the state Senate, we'll put the pencil to the paper and see if the mathematics add up.
And Sarah Lausen will check his math, by the way. Okay. Let's everybody give Chairman Kirk Dillard a big round of applause.